Another perspective from which we think about behavior is called personality, or an individual's characteristic pattern of thinking, feeling, and acting. And of course, all the characters we're going to watch have some characteristic patterns which fit with this. So I want us to think a little bit more specifically about the related theories and the related perspectives. One of those is called psychoanalytic theory. This is Freud's theory. Where I want to focus, though, is on the unconscious aspect of Freud's theory. He says this is where we put mostly unacceptable thoughts, wishes, feelings, and memories. So if we explore it, it can lead to painful and embarrassing memories. We're not going to really go into the rest of Freud's theory. I want to stay more with the idea of the unconscious. And Thumbsucker gives us a couple different angles to consider it from, both in Perry the Dentist's approach to working with what he calls the subconscious, and then also thinking about Justin's thumb-sucking behavior and how it might relate to some stuff going on in his unconscious. So Thumbsucker really gives us a chance to think about these ideas related to the psychoanalytic aspect. Carl Rogers' person-centered perspective and his idea of unconditional positive regard, which is actually pretty self-explanatory, it doesn't emerge a lot in the movies, but I also find it interesting, again, to think about Thumbsucker in terms of what if? What if we use Carl Rogers' theory? And so you'll notice the critical thinking question that encourages you to think about Carl Rogers' theory and how Justin's dad and Thumbsucker might have used that. The trait perspective is another angle on behavior. And the idea is that traits are an individual's unique dispositions and consistent ways of behaving. Collectively, they form then the person's personality. And again, each of the characters in the movies is going to some degree display the trait perspective. But as you think about and read about traits, I'd like you to center in and think about those big 5 personality characteristics. And I think Charlie Bartlett's character in particularly gives us some nice examples and a pretty straightforward depiction of those big 5 characteristics. The social cognitive perspective is also another perspective in thinking about what are our characteristic patterns of behaving. And more specifically, we have this idea of reciprocal influences. The idea is that we have 3 factors that are inseparably related: the person's behavior, the person's thinking, in other words, how they process information, and the environment. The idea is that they all feed into one another. We can't take them apart. I think this perspective can really illuminate the character's drug use in the movie Down to the Bone. So I want you to really think about that and how these factors are interrelated in influencing things like drug use. Another consideration is this idea of exploring the self, which there's a long history of research related to this, which intersects with our understanding of self-esteem, and then there's also some related phenomenon in our relation to the self, and I want you to read about self-reference effects, spotlights effects, and self-serving bias. I think in particular in the Savages, again, in Wendy's character, we can explore these ideas of self-esteem and how that affects behavior. And it might even interact and interrelate, kind of going back to the idea that we can't take things in isolation with what we talked about with attachment in the previous section. So we've got a couple more sections to go. There are a few more concepts to think about, highlighting and continuing to highlight the fact that this is all interrelated.